That's right, we're right here, Sharp Facets Gallery this afternoon, and I certainly hope you are going to enjoy what we are going to talk about, because I have Dr. Chad Kinsella from Lander University. He is a political science professor, and we always have some interesting conversations when we sit down here. So how have you been doing, Chad?
I've been doing very well, thank you.
And, you know, we had to change you. This is your third try, and I guess it's a charm today, right? With the snow and everything else?
Yes, snow, earthquakes will not stop me from getting here. So it's an honor to be on an award-winning show. So again, I could not let the forces of nature try to stop me.
Okay.
It took a little while, but we're here.
Absolutely. And of course, we're getting ready to have a lot of elections. We've got a lot of issues going on. We've got, a lot of division out there in the parties, and even within the parties, there's a lot of division. So I would be interested to know what your students are thinking about what's going on. Are they involved in the process?
Well, I kind of cheat, because as a political scientist, again, we have political science students, and they're already kind of
engaged,
very, very much engaged, and some of them work on many of the different campaigns. So they are engaged, and they're very excited about all the elections that are coming up, and I have some of them that are trying to encourage people that they know to run in primaries or run for office. So it's been a lot of fun, kind of giving them some insight, and I got my start working in campaigns, working in a congressional office in northern Kentucky. So it's kind of fun to kind of bring them in and say, hey, here's what I used to do, and this might work for you, and kind of give them a little guidance. So it's fun, can kind of live vicariously through them. So it's a lot of fun.
But how small a proportion of that is that to the whole campus over there at Lander?
To be fair, it is a smaller portion. And it's one of the things I belong to is the American Democracy Project, and that's one of the things we try to get students to get more engaged. How many people, I mean, really, if you go and look at a map, and if you look at Lander University and the surrounding areas, and kind of that area of Greenwood, again, it has the lowest turnout in the county. And you have a lot of students living there, and even though they registered to vote, a lot of them, still don't vote. So, but I don't think that that's unique among Lander's campus. I think that, again, youth voting, if you look at it, again, we talked about 2008. It's like, oh, Obama got all these youth voters out, and there was a bump in youth voting, but ultimately it's still much far below voting of any other age group. So it is very, very low still.
Now, of course, the big issue out there is Obamacare, and the youth need to sign up for this, and President Obama and his team are certainly going to some creative routes to try to get from Pajama Boy to, let's see, they've had cartoon characters, they have famous personalities. Have you all had any discussion about this in class?
We do occasionally, and I wish we taught more of a policy-oriented class, and I wish some of my 101 students would kind of talk about it more often. It is really interesting, and and now that you mention that, it would be fun to do kind of an informal poll of some of my students to see how many of them actually, did any of them sign up? I'm getting the sense, just because nobody really says anything, that I wonder how many of them, if any of them, had actually signed up. So it's really, it's very interesting. It's very controversial. They're having problems, to put it very mildly, they've had problems with the rollout. They have setbacks, pushing things back. The taxes are in place, but again, that's kind of we're in there. So it's very, very interesting, and I think some of the analysis has shown that, again, the youth, again, people who voted overwhelmingly for the president, might be the ones who get the most sticker shock out of this whole thing. So it's kind of been, I am surprised, I guess, and I really need to do an informal poll in my classes and say, how many of you signed up? What do you think about this? So I've had some conversations with some of the more kind of in-tune students about some of the different things, and kind of got a variety of opinions. Some people like it, some people don't like it. So it is kind of interesting, and now I'm even more curious. I should do an informal poll.
Well, you'll have to let me know what the results of this informal poll.
I will definitely have to email or call and let you know what happens. happens, because I am now very, very curious. I should have thought of this. Being a political scientist, we love polls, so this is something I should have done long ago. But so this would be very interesting to see. But you know, it's not talked about, and I get the sense that I wonder really if anybody's actually, any of my students have ever signed up for it.
Or if they've even gone online and looked at it.
Yeah,
that would be the thing. And of course, the fact that they can stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26.
And maybe that's why they haven't gone to it.
Right.
So, yeah, that's maybe that's something, you know, good for, I guess, for them, is that they can stay on there. I don't know about the parents if they're going to like that very much. I couldn't imagine the conversation going telling my parents that I was going to stay on their insurance until I was 26. They would not have liked that. But yes, there's a lot of.
Like at Thanksgiving, they had that commercial out there about Mom, Dad, we've got to have this conversation. You've got to sign. I want you, parents, telling their children to sign up for the healthcare system.
Yeah, it's well, it's really interesting, and it's. I mean, I have my own opinions, and again, I'm sure at some point there are a lot of people watching this, and we'll get some analysis. But you know, it seems like there's a lot of people who have either signed up and not paid. A lot of people are going and signing up, but they're going straight into Medicaid. So I mean, there are some kind of.
I'm trying to move my age forward so I can get into Medicare. You know, yeah. I just decided maybe that's the best place to go.
Yeah, maybe. So it is kind of, it's very interesting, and you know, some of the preliminary numbers really aren't all that encouraging, and they are doing major pushes, but you know, it doesn't seem like, again, from the preliminary numbers, that there's a whole lot of, that they're getting the support that they need and want to make this program a success. But again, we will see. You know, there's some good things in there that seem to work, and even things that Republicans had been saying for years to try to do. And then there's some other things that are a little iffy, if you will, that may or may not work, or we'll see. So it's kind of interesting.
What do you think about the spinning of all the numbers? I mean, you're a number person. What do you think about, here we have at one point the White House saying that these are the figures, and then somebody else comes out and says, no, these are the figures when we have the sign up and everything. What do you think about what is happening out there?
Well, I mean, it's a political game. And there's going to be, well, like the Bill O'Reilly, the no spin zone. And as much as he likes to say that's the no spin zone, there's a lot of spin going on his show as well.
Really? I never knew that. You mean Water's World and all that has spin to it?
So it's political. It's a political game, and again, being that the midterm elections are coming up, Obama and Democrats are very vested at this point to say that Obamacare is working, so they have to spin numbers in one way. Republicans are just as vested in saying that that the program is not working. So, and really, whether it is or isn't, I mean, both parties have kind of sunk in and said that this coming 2014 election is about Obamacare. So, I mean, if that being the case, they both have to spin the numbers to their advantage. So, it's politics.
It's politics.
Definitely politics. So it's in their best interest at this point for Democrats to make it look good, Republicans to make it look bad, because ultimately there's maybe evidence that this maybe even the U.S. Senate depends on how people perceive whether it's working or not working. So.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm here with Chad Kinsella. We are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, but you stay here. He just brought up the Senate. That means we have a candidate from South Carolina. Maybe we ought to talk a little bit about the battle that's enveloping right here in South Carolina. So don't you go away. We'll be right back. Oh, that's right. We're going with the flow this afternoon. We are talking with Chad Kinsella, and of course he is Dr. Chad Kinsella from over there at Lander University. He is a political science professor over there, and I actually think I almost stumped the professor here for a moment talking about what students are signing up for Obamacare. You're going to have to check this out now.
I'm definitely going to have to. An informal poll and going to just ask people in my different classes and just find out. I wonder how many of them have signed up. How many of them are planning to stay on their parents' insurance. how many of them care. And I've had some conversations with a couple of them, maybe some of them more involved in kind of getting their various opinions on the Affordable Health Care Act, aka Obamacare. But it'd be really interesting to do an informal poll and see.
That'd be interesting just to know if any of them have been on the website.
Yeah, I would actually. I would love to know that as well. Have you even looked? Is this something actually in their kind of their
sphere?
Yeah, in their sphere of something that they're thinking about at all. And I don't know, and I'd be very curious to find out. So I'll have to do that and maybe give you. It would be fun to just poll the entire Lander population, but it would be very interesting to find out. What they think about it, if they think at all about it, and if they've gone onto the website, have they signed up, or what's happening. So but that is a very good question, and that is something outside of just a few students that I've talked to. I haven't talked to I've never gotten a sense from the broader student body or just the people in my classes of what they think about the whole thing.
That's cool. That's cool. Glad to have given you a thought process here today.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's just kind of, but it's one of those things. It's like I have access to these students, and they're kind of I am now leading the class, so it's one of those things. It's I can have an informal poll today and say, hey, well, what do you think about this? I'm definitely going to have to do that. You exercise my power as kind of the head of the class.
As leader of the class.
Is kind of make them my guinea pigs for just a few moments. So that's.
And you didn't have to get elected to that.
No, not at all.
You just got the job.
Just appointed. Yes.
Well, speaking of that, we do have a big election coming up. Senator Lindsey Graham is up for re-election, as is Tim Scott also. In fact, all of the House of Representatives are up for re-election too. But the one that's garnishing the most notice and the most ire, I guess we could say, is Senator Lindsey Graham.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Senator Graham is definitely. It's really, I would say that again, from the polling numbers, and if you look at any of the national websites, and if you look at House races and stuff, there's no real action outside of Senator Graham's seat in South Carolina. I am very confident. If you can go to any other of the websites, look anywhere, and most people are very confident that again, the 7 seats here in South Carolina are going to be very stable. I don't see that any movement there, barring some sort of major shake-up of some kind or a scandal, which I also don't perceive. I think it's going to stay. So really, the only political action, as far as on the national level, is Senator Graham. So and I think it seems like he's got a fight on his hands. There's some things I think that have worked in his favor, but it's going to be very, very interesting.
Well, of course, we've got Nancy Mace.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Mace. We've got Richard Cash. And there's a couple of Bright. Yeah. See, I haven't heard much about Bright, though. He doesn't seem very actively bright here today.
He actually came to Lander. One of my students kind of set up and had him come to Lander. And, this was right before he made his announcement. And then it's been very quiet.
Right.
So... and the sheer fact that you have so many people running against Senator Graham, actually, I think probably runs in his favor. We'll see. I guess the key thing will be he could be, this is all speculation, could be in trouble if he doesn't get over that 50% mark, and then if there's a runoff where he has to face off against one other candidate by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, with several different people kind of dividing. The more conservative vote, and because South Carolina, which I always came from a closed primary, even open primary system, you could have a lot of independents and maybe even Democrats who could show up and swing the vote, or and again it could be like football, it's a game of inches. I think so. Just a couple people showing up could sway one way or another. So it could be very interesting. But I think that the fact that you had so many people line up against him could work in his favor, perhaps.
Well, I think one of the things that works in his favor is money.
Yes, that's another. Yes. Well, it always pays to be an incumbent. It is. If you ever look, it's like OpenSecrets.org, and they do a lot of this kind of independent group, and they look at a lot of different, lobbying and lobbying money and stuff like that. One of the things they've measured since 1964, the House and Senate, how many incumbents actually lose. And really, it's a rounding up, really the running average is 90% of incumbents win. And you can even look at 1994, you can look at 2006, you can look at 2010, and really the number of incumbents who actually lose nationwide is fairly few. So, and one of the reasons...
Why is that?
Well, they have
Money?
a name, money. But it really, again, I do that. Well, I tease my class. I said, look, if you had money to throw in on a campaign, and you wanted to make sure that you were getting the most bang for your buck, if you're a PAC, a political action committee, you had $10,000 to put down. Or if you're an individual and you're going to put down, the maximum, and you don't want to waste your money, who are you going to put your money on? I said, so I say, what would you do if I told you that you could go up to, I guess, North Carolina and go to a casino and play a game where you have a 90% chance of winning? I would put my money. I
would put my money there.
I hate losing, so I don't gamble a whole lot. But if I could play a game where I have a 90% chance of winning, or maybe even better, I'm putting my money down. So it is money. Money is a big part of it, and it seems to be. He's raised an incredible amount of money. And I think that's only going to help because he can put out the airwaves. He can communicate his message much better. And again, there's a smaller pot between all of his competitors. So again, they're having to split up the money, split up the vote, and I think that only helps. So yes, money is definitely as an undeniable part of politics. Again, there's a lot of discussion whether it's good or bad, but it is here. And again, the Supreme Court is basically protected under freedom of speech. So therefore, it is a part of the political game, and it is very, very important. And incumbents get it by leaps and bounds.
Now, but one of the things that I thought when Nancy Mace got into the race, being from the Citadel, if she could garner the support of the Citadel and all the people in that she might have a better chance. Perhaps,
and it's difficult in a primary to know who's going to show. It is it's not a shotgun, so to speak. It's a rifle. It's very, very targeted. And if you look at there really are a very smaller number of primary voters, and so really you have to kind of go after those people. The Citadel is ultimately, there's a whole lot of graduates from the Citadel, and that might help her. How many of them are still in the state? How many of them vote in the Republican primary? Can she get a hold of all of those different people? So that, it could be an advantage, we'll see.
Sure.
And Citadel is very powerful. One of my friends was a state senator in Kentucky, he retired, and the person who took over for him was a Citadel graduate. So again, the reach of the Citadel is very far. So they've taken over my former state senate seat in northern Kentucky, of all things. So there's a Citadel grad there. So there is a big reach, and that is a very powerful and a very tight knit organization. So university, I should say. Actually, and I'm going there in a week to the symposium on Southern politics. So there's a lot of people from across the country that will go to the Citadel and talk about Southern politics. And so it's a very political place, and they're very involved and very tight-knit. Tight community. So that could be something definitely in her favor. Absolutely.
Sure. Well, I just was looking at, from that standpoint, what she could bring to the table as far as raising money and as far as making connections out there.
Oh, definitely. There are people that graduate from the Citadel. That there's a vast people to be tapped with money, and there are a lot of the Citadel graduates that are still here. So yes, that is definitely. Everything that can be used to an advantage in a political campaign, must be used, and I'm sure that she is tapping that, and she does have some historical, being the first female to graduate of the Citadel, that's something big, and it's quite interesting also. Republicans have a woman problem, so to speak. There is that gender gap, and it was the most pronounced in 2012, where men were more likely to vote Republican and women were much more likely to vote Democrat. So that is something, perhaps because it is Senator Graham, I'm sure that the National Party wouldn't be involved, but that is something perhaps that could help the Republicans. And something that she definitely could talk about and put out there. So definitely something
And
important.
she's a small businessman
And
person.
that also, yeah, she's got a lot of the key credentials of necessary to kind of fill those shoes to what is needed and what is wanted in the party. So definitely a small business, graduate of the Citadel. A woman is very, very helpful, especially for the Republican Party at this point. So but it all matters.
Ultimately, it comes down to money, and I think she's got about 500,000. And how much does Lindsay have? 5, 6, 7 million.
Yes, it's a considerable amount, and again, that's that's going to be very hard to contend
There's a
with.
song.
Yes.
Money makes the world go round the world. Go round. There you go.
And especially politics.
Especially politics.
Especially politics. It is crucial in politics. Money doesn't really make the campaign. You got it, without it. It's what was it? There was a politician out in California is the mother's milk of politics, and really that is the absolute truth. So very important.
One thing that I think would be interesting, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
What if you only could have so much money to run in a political campaign? What if everybody had to get out there and be a grassroots campaigner? What would be the effect of that? What if you said there was only, I don't know, 20 or 50,000 or 100,000? We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to let Chad answer that question. And Gracie, don't get so excited.
Are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? Or a college tuition hung on a wall? Or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facets Gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facets Gallery, 72 Bypass, and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
Oh, that's right. We're right here, Sharp Facets Gallery, talking to Dr. Chad Kinsella. Hey, if you got a question you want to throw out there for us to gnaw on today, you can do that. 229-7984. That's 229-7984. And Chad, I was just asking you, what would be the effect if there was only, let's say you could only spend $100,000 on a campaign, all candidates, that was it. What effect would that have on things?
It would be dramatic. There are, New Zealand, I think Australia, many Western European democracies, many democracies across the world have campaign limits, donation limits, and how much they can spend. So the effects would be pretty much dramatic, probably almost overnight. It's hard to tell. Now, again, all of those other democracies would have, parliamentary, so it's a different setup than what we have here in the United States. My thought would be that, you'd have an immediate effect in the primaries, probably not an effect in the general election for a while, as we talk about gerrymandering. If you look across the country at this point, there are very, very few states that are not dominated by one party or another. And again, what they've done in 2010 is they've gerrymandered the districts in such a way that it's guaranteed who's going to win those districts at this point. So the big thing, I think, the immediate effect would be in the primaries. Right now in the primaries, you can see here again, there's a lot of money being put forth, so it's going to kind of it'll level the playing field in some respects, and it'll give other organizations, other groups, the press might have more importance because people will go to them for information. The fact that you have maybe a staff of people who work for you, whether it be a governor or whether it be a House or Senate member, those people, that might be able to push people over the edge. But that could level the playing field. So it would be dramatic, and they have talked about that several times. In the United States, the current courts have struck that down as again political donations being freedom of speech. So, but it is not inevitable that that could be something we see at some point in time. I would not say that it is impossible here in the United States.
Well, to move on to another election that's going to be coming up, I am amazed at the number of people that are jumping in for the superintendent of education. That is going to be a huge race.
Yeah, and I haven't seen too much into that, but yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of really big statewide races, and I have not seen too much on, and then that's probably...
It's the number of people that I'm seeing that are jumping into this race. I don't see how actually anybody's going to stand a chance. There's going to have to be a runoff with the number of people that are getting into the race.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's really interesting because again, coming from Kentucky and Ohio, where I'm originally from, and where I worked in politics, we never had this runoff. So it was kind of like if you, especially in a primary, if you had too many people jump in, it was a guaranteed slam dunk. With this runoff here, in a lot of southern states, including South Carolina, it's very interesting to kind of see because you got to see if you don't reach the 50% marker, you're in a runoff, so it can level the playing field. So I mean,
well, the very fact that the superintendent of education for the state is not running is going to create I think is what has created all this posse here.
Yeah, and it kind of makes it anybody's game. So it's especially with this whole runoff system, it could be very, very interesting to see what happens. And I think that goes with any race at all with the runoff system. It kind of does level the playing field, if you will, in such a way that it doesn't guarantee somebody the front runner isn't guaranteed. I was thinking back, what was it? With Governor Haley and was it Gresham Barrett when so again it was really interesting. That runoff can be the deciding factor, particularly if you have kind of the big what they call the big mo in political science momentum on your side. It can you can beat the front runner. So that does happen. So that will be very, very interesting to see how that and many other the statewide races end up when you have a whole lot of people. And then you have the runoff here as South Carolina does. Very, very interesting. A lot more fun for me to watch from that perspective as a political scientist.
Now, of course, there will be Governor Haley and Vincent Shaheen going for the governor's race. I think that's going to be kind of, I'm going to say, a nasty race.
Yeah, I definitely do think.
Or dirty, whatever you want to call it, yes.
It could, and I've read some things on that, and it's kind of interesting. It's been kind of, quiet here. Maybe recently, that's just very, very recently. It's
quiet before the storm.
That could be it. That's kind of what I was thinking. But it's been fairly quiet, or either that, or I've been so so busy at doing stuff. I guess that's one of the sad things is you teach politics, and I don't get to. Sometimes we get so busy into doing different research, teaching, and stuff like that. I don't get to follow my true calling, the interest. But anyway, that will be a really interesting race. It's being looked at nationally. Because Governor Haley's been looked at for as a potential maybe somebody who runs for president, maybe somebody who could be a vice presidential candidate. So she's been looked at very widely across the country. So there are a lot of people that will be watching that race very, very closely. And I know that the Democrats are kind of itching to try to, and it was very, very close in 2010. And 2010 being a very good year for Republicans. So it'll be really interesting to see, what ultimately happens with all this. And I think it will be kind of an ugly race. You have, two people that ran against each other. There's already a little bit of blood in the water, so to speak, because they've already had kind of a go around with this, and so they're going to kind of go back at it. It was interesting. We got to actually meet. We were at the South Carolina student legislature. We went and met Governor Haley. It was kind of nice, and you could definitely tell that she was in full campaign mode. She was in full campaign mode. A group of students and a colleague of mine got to go to Charlotte to see the DNC, and Senator Shaheen was there, and you could tell, even though people had asked him and said, "Are you running for governor again?" It was right. He kind of
he's being coy,
very, very coy, but it was very clear. He was he had his sights set. He was fine-tuning his message. Even then, it was a group of mostly of South Carolina students. So it was very, very clear from the outset that that rematch was going to happen. So it's going to be very, very interesting, and I do look forward to this really starting to pick up at some point. And maybe I can only imagine this is right now we're in the calm before the storm, before this really picks up. And again, I think that'll be something. Nikki Haley. is really becoming, you know, a national figure. People know people from my back home and you know, in and around Cincinnati, you know a lot of actually South Carolina characters. I'm always interested when I go back to Cincinnati.
Characters, South Carolina characters. Okay.
Well, it's really, I mean, you know, think about Joe Wilson. There are still a whole lot of people with bumper cars in and around Cincinnati, you know, with his "You Lie." So you know. And
now he walks across the commons there, and everybody comes up and congratulates him. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, and you know, it's really, you know, people know Tim Scott, you know, back. So I mean, there are a lot of, you know, national figures, and so with Nikki Haley being such a prominent national figure, you know, that brings, you know, that makes her a target. And again, kind of a darling, you know, endorsed by Sarah Palin, kind of, you know, a darling of the Tea Party. So again, you know, that makes her a target. And ultimately, some of the polling has shown, I think it will be a close race. I think the governor still has kind of an edge in this, but you know, and, you know, I think it's going to be close, regardless of how it goes. It's going to be close, and I think that you're going to see a lot of national money come in from the Republican Governors Association, Democratic Governors Association, to back their respective candidates. So. I can only imagine this is going to.
That sounds good for me, being in radio.
Oh yes,
yeah, that's right.
I think you are. There's
in a good position here.
Yes, I think you're definitely in a good position, because I think, you know, I don't think either one of them are going to be hurting for money. I think that it's going to come in because they both. It's a big target. It'd be, you know.
Well,
Democrats,
it's actually a must-win for Nikki Haley. She's got to win, or it's going to be bad for her.
Yeah, I mean, you're really So I mean, any national aspirations she may or may not have, if she does have them, end at that point if she loses. And you know, Democrats, in order to kind of show that they have, you know, a pulse in the Deep South, which they have not really shown that they have in quite some time, you know, this would be a really big pickup to come to South Carolina and you know, win the governor. And again, they could go in and say, look, you know, we can compete here in the South, and here's how you do it. And again, you know, you have different type of Democrat here in the South than you would maybe in the, you know, the Northeast or out in California. But so far they haven't been competitive. If Shaheen wins, you know, that could, you know, change the perception, you know, nationally about Democrats being able to win and you know, in the South. So it's going to be. I think it's a very big, it's a very, very important race. You know, not only for the state, but I think it's going to be watched nationally. So it's going to be, hold on to your seats. It's going to be very, very interesting. And
it's going to be a ride,
yes.
Folks, a wild ride. Hey, I'm Ann Eller here with Dr. Chad Kinsella from Lander University. We are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. That's right. We're talking, I tell you what, it's hard when you have a lot of ideas coming out here this afternoon. We are here with Dr. Chad Kinsella, and we are talking politics this afternoon. He is a political science professor over at Lander University. So, you know, what do you think here? You know, everybody is already talking about the presidential election. Here we are. We've been talking about the stuff coming up, but the presidential. And, of course, the Democrats, who is going to be the candidate? And of course, Hillary seems to be, and they had a PAC meeting down here in Columbia. What do you think at this point, taking a snapshot of right now, what do you think?
Hillary Clinton is, I don't know if she would like me to use this, the idea that she is the elephant in the room, maybe the donkey in the room perhaps, but really, it seems like, and if you look at any polling numbers, if she runs, she's well known, she's well liked among Democrats. You know, she was very, very close to, you know, in 2008 to being the nominee. So has
she lost any ground, particularly with Benghazi, for an election?
Benghazi is interesting. And this is from me again. Benghazi, it is important. It cannot be denied that is something that is.
Oh, come on! She said, "What difference does it make?"
Yes, I know.
Come on now, Chad.
You can't. I don't think that this is something that can. And again, they have tried several times to push this on. You know, push this away and say this is a non-issue, but it keeps coming up. So that might hurt her. But I think the problem with Benghazi is, you know, Joe American or Jane American. Mm-hmm. It's a complex issue. I don't think understand it. And so I think, you know, as Republicans continue to try to push this issue, And when I talk to my students about it, I think people are, it's kind of like, well, I don't really get what happened there. And it's not, again, when you think about, negative ad campaigns, it's got to be, a couple of seconds. It's like, here's what she did and here's why it's wrong. It's not short enough. It needs, some explanation, I think.
Well, how about if we brought Susan Rice out there? She was part of this.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard. I think it's hard for most Americans to kind of understand what is going on. It's kind of one of those things, I think, political elites, to use that, maybe I shouldn't use, but anyway,
right.
Use that word. It's like, we can understand that, something happened here, and, there, it needs to be...
Are you telling me what difference does it make is going to be her campaign spear?
Well, I think...
Her slogan here, what difference did it make?
Let's
move on.
I think she could say, almost ignore it, and I think if anybody tried to make hay out of that issue, which I think inevitably they will, I think, this is opinion only, that they'll have a hard time, trying to explain to middle America, if you will, the regular, people who vote, what happened and why they should care. I think it's a very difficult issue for, regular folks, to use that word, to kind of to grasp what happened and understand why Hillary was, maybe culpable and all that. So I think I think it's a difficult issue, and I think it makes sense for most people to say, yes, something happened here, and Hillary Clinton can't just sweep this under the rug and say, it doesn't matter, makes no difference, throw her hands up. But I think it's hard to make like a negative ad campaign or something like that, make hay out of it, so to speak, political hay out of it, that will resonate with the average American, that will make sense. And that's my opinion, because I think it's a fairly complex issue. So. I don't think that hurts her. That might hurt her in the general election, potentially. Okay. And it all depends upon if they can make, the 15-second, 30-second commercial out of it, and and people can say, okay, I understand it. And I think in the Democratic primary, I just think that she is so well known and ultimately so well liked. She handled the whole 2000. She could have taken that to the convention. She didn't. Gave a fairly good speech endorsing Obama. Maybe it could have been better, but it's tough. So she did the right things. She served as Secretary of State. So I think that she could win that Democratic primary fairly easily. The question will be, will she run? She is getting older. There's a lot. So I think that one of the key things that has to be thought about is what happens if she doesn't. I think that has to be, there could be, again, it seems like she would wrap up that Democratic primary. There's a very good chance where she may say she doesn't run. Then it's a wide open field, and it makes it a whole lot more interesting. You have what I can't remember his name.
Is there anybody that stands out beyond Hillary?
Well, Joe Biden maybe. I don't know that he'll do well as he thinks.
We're going to miss Joe, though, aren't we?
I will definitely miss Joe Biden, because he is the most
his zingers,
and he is one of the most gaffe-prone people, and it makes him very likable, very likable guy.
It's like, what difference does it make who's president when it comes to Obamacare? Which side are you on, Joe?
He is an interesting guy, but I don't know that he has enough to carry him for the presidency. You have a lot of really interesting governors out there. You have Cuomo out of New York, who has done a fairly good job in New York. He's been known for kind of being bipartisan and working with particularly Republicans in the state Senate. And his name escapes me at this moment, but the governor of Montana is kind of seen as the anti-Obama, kind of being a more kind of the outside of D.C., kind of maybe a more moderate to conservative Democrat. So,
should somebody be a governor that runs for president? This has been the big conversation that has come around a lot of times.
Typically, if you look at it historically, you have two people run for governor. Usually it's a governor or, for president is a governor or a senator. They do have governing experience, so that's something that they that they can come to the table and say, hey, I've ran a state. Let me take the next shot at running for I can run the country. I've run this state. So it's a very logical argument. And again, if you look, President Bush was governor of Texas.
Sure.
And so that helped him. Now Texas is one of the weakest governors, and I remember a whole lot of people trying to say that in way back in 2000. in the primary, it's like, oh, well, Texas governor really doesn't do a whole lot. But it's a big state, and he did come out there, and obviously he won the Republican primary and was elected twice to as president. So I mean, I was Texas governor. I have some experience to offer the country, and so it's a lot. I think it's a logical somebody that we logically look to to run for president and be president.
Now, on the Republican side, there's a lot of action going on the Republican side. We've got Governor Chris Christie as one possibility.
Christie is out there. You
Scott Walker.
You have Scott. You have a couple of different governors. Bobby Jindal out of Louisiana is kind of you have kind of a couple.
Are you saying that because of the spar that he put out there yesterday afternoon after their meeting?
Yeah, was that Tim O'Malley of Maryland? I think he kind of. I didn't get to see the whole video clip of it, but he's got a little bit of fight, and he's been a major critic of the president, and
then he'd get Governor Haley to run as vice president with Jindal here.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you could have again, yes, a very. It's kind of ethnically driven. That wouldn't be good perhaps for Governor Haley. Maybe if Governor Haley wins, is she
staying there?
Is she a possibility for It's kind of anybody's. There's several different senators out there. Marco Rubio. You have Senator Paul, who, like his dad, will probably run for president, maybe multiple times. Again, he was right as I was leaving Northern Kentucky. He had gotten elected as senator. So. The Republican field is very, very competitive.
Can the Republican field win the presidency?
Yes. I think the interesting thing that has happened, if you look at American politics, and again, it's maybe the American people, or I don't know what it is, it's kind of, we go Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. So it would stand to reason that 2016 would be a better year for Republicans. But again, they have to have the right person run. Again, the climate still has to favor them. Does Hillary Clinton win the Democratic primary, and does that make her the inevitable winner of the presidency? A lot of big questions out there. Can Governor Christie, who seemed like he was the front runner, get over this whole Bridgegate thing? So far, he's done okay. It seems like with it, he hasn't really even gotten that beat up in polls done in New Jersey.
This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
No problem. And so, what happens to him? But it's interesting if you think about presidential, really primaries for that matter. Way back in 2007, I remember I wrote a paper and I thought it was brilliant. I was talking about what was going to happen when Giuliani ran against Clinton for the presidency in 2008. That one quickly went to the trash heap because the two front runners ended up not getting. Giuliani, was a front runner for a very long time for 2008, and I don't think he won any delegates to speak of. Bad strategy in the primary. So,
is it too early to talk about 2016?
Well, it's never too early to talk about. So no, I mean, but I think one of the key things that you always have to keep in mind, and that was a hard lesson for me as a graduate student who was supposed to be able to.
Who knows it all.
Yeah, knows it all and is supposed to be able to prognosticate and know everything about political science. I did this whole big paper about, it was Catholic voters and how they would vote for Clinton or Giuliani. It was pointless. So I got it both wrong. So it wasn't even close. So one of the key things is, even though there are front runners right now, anything is possible. There is a possibility, Hillary Clinton may not run for one reason or another. That makes the field, wide open for the Democrats. Republicans, Governor Christie.
The question I have is, why would she run? Why would she run?
Sometimes I wonder why anybody would run. I think I think President Obama was in there and he had the governors and in there, and there were a lot of different governors on the Democrat and Republican side that had people who could run in 2016, and he said something to the fact. He said, "It's all yours. come and get it." I'm kind of done with it. So, why would she run? It's kind of, it almost seems like she would have probably, I think at this point, probably an easier time in the Democratic primary. It seems like, again, all the polling numbers. And again, even though I'm contradicting myself, as I just said, that anything could happen, she's just a mammoth, and it's just a well-known name. Her and President Clinton still go across the country, and as Bill Clinton always called it, pressing the flesh. He works on behalf of Democrats. There are people who owe Bill and Hillary a lot of favors.
Exactly.
So I mean, if she does decide to run, and I guess ultimately it runs down to her reasons will be of her own. I don't know if she will be fairly advanced in age by the time she does decide to run. So and it might end up saying, she may say it's been a good ride. We've already had one Clinton. I'm getting older, and I enjoy the twilight years as opposed to all the stress of the presidency. That could happen. And there's been some questions about her health and some of the things that have happened where she's had was it she passed out at one point and went to the hospital, and there's been speculation that those were bigger episodes, medical episodes than they were made for. So all of those things are out there as a possibility, and if she doesn't run, that really I think makes a wide open field.
And makes your job a lot more interesting.
Yeah, but primaries are very, very interesting, and it's all about strategy. It's all about New Hampshire and Iowa, and ultimately really South Carolina, and winning those early states and getting the momentum. And anything can happen. And you have a front runner one day who is out the next. Giuliani is the perfect example. Bet it all on Florida and lost big. So.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Chad, it's been a long time since we've had you on. We're going to have you on with a more regular basis. I think these type of conversations are fascinating.
Well, as a political scientist, I would definitely agree. This is definitely it's kind of interesting. This is one of the I can sit down and have a political conversation. My wife, I try to talk to her about politics, and she just said, and
leave me alone.
Yes, leave me alone.
Let's talk about the kids.
Yeah, let's talk
something.
about that, or The Bachelor, or something, or else with some sort of show that she wants to watch, and so that's one of the things. So it's always a pleasure, and it's a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, Chad Kinsella. Dr. Chad Kinsella was with us this afternoon from Lander University. Hey, I'm Ann Eller. Do want to remind you tonight at 6 o'clock at the Veterans Auditorium there, they are having the dedication of a new case down there, but also this is a very special ceremony for Eric Pfeiffer, who lost his life in 2005 serving our country. His dad and his mom are going to be there. We'd really appreciate it if you were there to show support. Please be there before 6 o'clock. Ceremony will be over by 6:30. It would mean a lot. Please be there. Thank you so much. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Bye-bye, everybody.